Top movies get medieval battles wrong. We all have the image in our heads. Two huge armies stand on opposite sides of a green field. A king gives a rousing speech. Then, with a great roar, everyone runs at each other. They crash together in the middle. It becomes a huge, swirling mess of individual fights. Our hero cuts his way through 10 men. He finds the enemy general, and they have a dramatic sword duel. It looks like a mosh pit with swords. It's pure chaos. This is what we think of as a medieval battle. It's exciting to watch. It makes for good drama, but it's almost completely false. It's a fantasy. A real army that fought like that would be destroyed in minutes. Imagine running full speed across a muddy field in armor, holding a weapon and a shield. You would be exhausted before you even reached the enemy. You would trip over your own friends. The front line would slam into the enemy, and the guys behind would pile into their backs. There would be no room to swing a sword. Your flanks, the sides of your army, would be wide open. A small, organized group of enemies could just walk around the side and stab you all in the back. This idea of a chaotic free-for-all is a modern invention. It comes from a misunderstanding of how people fight. We think of individual skill, we picture warriors as singular heroes, but that's not what won battles. Battles were won by groups. They were won by discipline and cohesion. The goal wasn't to find a worthy opponent and have an honorable duel. The goal was to stay alive, and the best way to stay alive was to stick together. The image of two walls of bodies running at each other is powerful. It feels primal. It seems to make sense, but warfare is practical. It's about solving a problem. The problem is the other army. The solution is not to create a disorganized mob. That just creates more problems. The solution is to use structure. The truth is, medieval battles were a lot less like a riot and a lot more like a brutal, grinding rugby scrum. The whole point of military training, even back then, was to fight this instinct for chaos. It was to get men to stand in a line when every part of their body was screaming at them to run. It was to get them to trust the man next to them. The man with the shield on your right protects your side. You protect the man on your left. You don't run off to be a hero. You stay in your place. You hold the line. If you run, you create a gap. And a gap is how an entire army dies. So that big, messy brawl we see in movies, it did happen. But it didn't happen at the start. It happened at the end. It happened when one side broke. The chaos wasn't the plan. The chaos was the sign of total failure. It was the moment a battle turned into a slaughter. Before that moment, for hours sometimes, the fight was about something else entirely. It was about order. It was a terrifying, exhausting struggle to maintain a simple, solid line against an enemy trying to do the same thing. The chaos was what everyone was desperately trying to avoid. The most important piece of technology in a medieval battle was not the sword. It was the line. A line of men standing shoulder to shoulder was the basic unit of warfare for thousands of years. From the ancient Greeks to the Vikings to the Knights of Hastings, the principle was the same. Stay together. The most common and effective formation was the shield wall. It's exactly what it sounds like. Men stood in ranks. The front rank locked their shields together, creating a solid wall of wood and steel. The men in the ranks behind them added their weight, pushing forward. They might have spears, which they could poke over or through the gaps in the wall. Or they might have short swords or axes for close, brutal work. This wasn't a static wall. It was a living thing. The two armies would meet, shield to shield, and then they would push. It was a contest of strength and will. The goal was to push the other line back, to make it bend, and, hopefully, to make it break. It was incredibly loud. You would hear the roar of men shouting, the smash of weapons on shields, the screams of the wounded. But it was not a chaotic swirl. It was a focused, directional effort. You pushed forward. You held your ground. You didn't run around. Fighting in a shield wall was claustrophobic and terrifying. You could barely see. Your world was the shield in front of you, and the men pressed against your sides and back. You stabbed at whatever legs or arms appeared under the enemy's shields. It was ugly, nasty work. But it was safe, or safer. An arrow might hit you, a spear might find a gap, but as long as the wall held, you were protected from a full-on assault. You were part of something stronger than any single warrior. Of course, things evolved. The rise of the heavy cavalry, the knight on his warhorse, changed the game. A shield wall of infantry was vulnerable to a charge. 1,000 pounds of horse, an armored man hitting a line at full gallop could shatter it. So, infantry had to adapt. The Scots at battles like Bannockburn used the schiltron. This was essentially a shield wall turned into a circle or a large square with long pikes pointing out in all directions. It looked like a giant hedgehog. A horse will not charge into a solid wall of spear points. The Schiltron was a defensive formation designed to neutralize the knight's greatest weapon, the charge. Later, the Swiss perfected this idea with their pike squares. These were not just defensive hedgehogs. They were disciplined, mobile blocks of men, sometimes thousands of them, with pikes that were 18 feet long. They could march across a battlefield, a moving fortress of spear points that cavalry could not break. They were the most feared infantry in Europe for a time, and their strength came from one thing: discipline. Every man had to move together. They trained for hours learning to maneuver as a single unit. It was the opposite of chaos. It was order used as a weapon. Even archers were not just a crowd of men shooting arrows randomly. At famous battles like Agincourt, the English longbowmen were a strategic weapon, and they were placed on the flanks. They hammered the charging French knights with thousands of arrows. The goal was to disrupt the enemy's formation, to kill their horses, to cause panic and confusion before the main lines even met. The arrows weren't just meant to kill. They were meant to break the enemy's order, so the English men-at-arms would have an easier job. So the real picture of a medieval battle is one of large blocks of men holding their shape, trying to break the other army's shape. The battle was won by the side that kept its discipline the longest, the side that held its line. The individual hero was a liability. The disciplined soldier who stood his ground next to his comrades was the one who won the day. Imagine being a medieval general, a king or a great lord. You spend weeks or months gathering your army. You march them for days to a chosen field. The morning of the battle, you get on your horse and ride to a high point, a small hill overlooking the valley. You can see the whole enemy army laid out before you. You can see your own men, organized into their divisions, or battles, as they were called. You have a plan. You've decided to put your best knights in the center. You've put your archers on the wings, hoping to shoot at the enemy's flanks. You've kept a small group of loyal knights in reserve, hidden behind the hill, ready to be used at a critical moment. Everything is in place. You give the signal, the horns blow, the banners raise, and your army begins its slow advance. And then, for the most part, you lose control. Once the two armies crash together, the battlefield becomes a place of immense confusion. A huge cloud of dust gets kicked up. The noise is deafening. It's a constant roar of thousands of men screaming, of metal hitting metal. You can no longer see individual units clearly. All you can see are the great banners, the flags that mark where your divisions are supposed to be. You watch them sway and move, trying to figure out who is winning, how to give an order now. You can't just yell, no one will hear you. You have a few simple horn calls. One might mean advance. Another might mean halt. Another might signal a retreat. But they are simple signals, and they can be misheard in the noise. Banners can also signal things. Dipping a banner might be a command to charge. But what if the smoke and dust are too thick? What if the banner bearer is killed? Your best option is to send a messenger, a young knight on a fast horse carrying your words. But he has to ride through a dangerous, confusing battlefield. He might get lost. He might be killed by a stray arrow. He might get pulled off his horse and killed by enemy soldiers who have broken through the line. Even if he makes it, it might take him 10 or 20 minutes to reach the commander he needs to talk to. By then, the situation has completely changed. The order you sent is now useless or even dangerous. This is the fog of war. It's the gap between your plan and the messy reality. Because of this, medieval command was mostly about what you did before the first sword was swung. The battle was often won or lost in the deployment. Did you choose the right ground? Did you put your troops in the right formation? Did you anticipate what the enemy was going to do? A good commander made a solid plan and then trusted his subordinate commanders, the men leading the individual divisions, to carry it out. The one tool you had to influence the fight was your reserve. This was the key to high-level generalship. Holding back a part of your army, usually your best troops, was a huge gamble. It weakened your main line. But if you use it at the right moment, it could win you the battle. You watch the fight unfold. You see one of your divisions starting to buckle. The enemy is pushing them back. The line is about to break. Now is the moment. You send in your reserve. A fresh, rested unit of knights crashes into the flank of the tired, disorganized enemy. The enemy is surprised. They were focused on the fight in front of them. Now they are being attacked from the side. They panic, they run, and you've just won. William the Conqueror at the Battle of Hastings in 1066 was a master of this. The battle lasted all day. Several times his Norman army was close to breaking. But he held his nerve. He rallied his men. He used his cavalry in small, controlled charges to harass the English shield wall. He waited for his moment. Late in the day, when the English were tired and their shield wall was weakening, he committed everything he had in a final, decisive charge. And it worked. The English line broke. So, being a commander was a strange mix of total control and total helplessness. You were an architect, designing the battle in the hours before it began. But once the construction started, you became a spectator, watching your creation take on a life of its own, hoping that the foundations you laid were strong enough to withstand the storm. We've looked at the battle from above, from the General's Hill. We looked at it as a diagram, as lines and blocks of men. But what was it like for the man in that line? What was it like to be the guy in the third rank of a pike square, with the fate of kingdoms being decided a few feet in front of you? For him, the battle was absolutely chaos. Your world shrinks. It becomes tiny. Your vision is limited by the helmet on your head. You might have just a narrow slit to look through. You can't turn your head easily. There you see the back of the man. In front of you, you see a small patch of the enemy line. You can't see what's happening on the flanks. You have no idea if the battle is being won or lost. You only know about your 10 square feet of mud and blood. Then there's the noise. It's not just loud, it's overwhelming, it's a physical force, it's thousands of men screaming in rage and fear. It's the constant rhythmic thud of weapons on shields, it's the high-pitched shriek of wounded horses. It's the sound of horns blowing, trying to signal orders that you can't possibly understand. The noise is so constant that it stops being individual sounds and just becomes a single horrifying roar. You can't think. You can't hear the man next to you. You just react. And the smell. The air is thick with it. The smell of sweat is everywhere. The smell of fear, which is a real animal smell. The smell of hot blood. The smell of churned up mud and grass. The smell of men who have soiled themselves in terror. It's a foul, stomach-turning mix that gets into your mouth and nose. You are not an individual fighter. You are a cog in a machine. Your job is simple. You hold your spear. You point it forward. You push against the back of the man in front of you. You add your weight to the great shove. When the man in front of you falls, you step over his body and take his place. You don't make decisions. You don't have a strategy. You just do what you were trained to do. You stand. You push. You stab. The ground under your feet is a nightmare. It's muddy and slippery. It's covered with dropped weapons, broken shields, and bodies. You struggle to keep your footing. If you fall, you will likely be trampled to death by your own comrades from behind. They can't stop. The pressure from the back of the formation is too great. Falling is a death sentence. Fear is a constant presence. It's a cold knot in your stomach. You see men die right next to you. A man you were sharing bread with this morning suddenly has a spear through his throat. He gurgles and falls. You have no time to mourn. You have to close the gap. The only thing that keeps the fear from overwhelming you is the presence of the other men. You are all in this together. The man on your left is just as scared as you are. The man on your right is too. This shared experience creates a strange kind of courage. It's not about being brave. It's about not wanting to let down the man next to you. It's about being more afraid of running away and being called a coward than you are of the enemy in front of you. This is the great paradox of a medieval battle. From a distance, it is a thing of order and formation, of lines and maneuvers. But on the ground, for the individual soldier, it is a sensory overload of terror and confusion. His personal experience is one of pure chaos. He survives by clinging to the discipline he was taught, by trusting the system. He is a single, terrified man who finds his only safety in becoming part of a larger, organized whole. His world might be chaos, but his actions must be ordered. His life depends on it. A medieval battle was not a constant, high-intensity slaughter that lasted for 8 hours. Human beings can't fight with that kind of fury for so long. It was a long, grinding affair with periods of intense violence and periods of exhaustion. Two shield walls might push against each other for a while, then pull back a few feet to catch their breath before crashing together again. It was a contest of endurance as much as a contest of arms. The vast majority of the killing did not happen during this grinding phase. When two disciplined formations were locked together, casualties were surprisingly low. It was hard to get a clean blow in. Most wounds were not instantly fatal. A man might get a cut on his arm or a spear in his leg. He would be pulled back from the line and someone else would take his place. The real bloodbath happened in a very short, specific window of time. It happened when one side broke. This was the moment the entire battle was about. It was the breaking point. It could happen for many reasons. A unit might be exhausted. They might have taken too many casualties. A particularly fearsome enemy charge might punch a hole in their line. The commander might be killed, and seeing his banner fall could crush their morale. Whatever the reason, a few men in the front rank start to back away. They turn, they start to run. Panic is a contagion. It spreads faster than any disease. The men next to them see them running. They think, they must know something I don't. The battle is lost. So they turn and run too. Then the men behind them, who can't even see the enemy, see their own comrades fleeing. They panic. Within seconds, a solid, disciplined unit of soldiers dissolves into a terrified mob of individuals. The line is broken. This is when the chaos that everyone feared finally arrives. And it is a butcher's work. The men who are running have thrown away their heavy shields to be faster. They have dropped their spears. They are focused only on escape. Their backs are turned. Now the enemy, who are still in formation and still fresh, surge forward. It is no longer a fight. It is a pursuit. This is when the cavalry has its day. Knights on horseback, who may have been held in reserve, are now unleashed. They can ride down fleeing infantrymen with ease. A man on foot, tired and weighed down by armor, cannot outrun a horse. The knights don't have to worry about a wall of spears anymore. They can ride into the scattered mob and cut them down from behind. It is easy, safe, and brutal work. Most of the deaths in any given medieval battle happen during this route. Historians looking at battle accounts will see numbers like 10,000 men killed on one side, and only a few hundred on the other. This doesn't mean the winning side were supermen. It means they held their formation, and the other side did not. The losers were not killed in the main fight. They were slaughtered while they tried to flee. This is the ultimate answer to the question of whether medieval battles were chaotic. The entire science of medieval warfare was a desperate attempt to impose order on a fundamentally violent and unpredictable situation. The formations, the discipline, the commands, the strategy, all of it was a system designed to do one thing: prevent your own army from breaking. You fought in a disciplined line so you wouldn't have to run, because everyone knew what happened when you ran. The chaos wasn't the method of fighting, it was the consequence of losing. A battle was a tense, fragile bubble of order. The two armies pressed against it, testing it, trying to find a weak spot. For hours, the bubble might hold. But eventually, one side would apply too much pressure. The bubble would pop. And what followed was the true, unrestrained chaos of the medieval battlefield. And it was not a swirling, romantic brawl. It was a one-sided, terrifying massacre of men running for their lives. The order was the fight. The chaos was the end.